discussion will focus on tackling key regulatory challenges like the EU ETS, FuelEU Maritime, and the IMO's midterm measures. We will explore strategies for compliance, fleet optimization, and sustainable operations. Joining us today is three industry experts from 𝗍𝗏𝗋, Anil Jacob, Managing Director, Anup Chechani, Head of Technical Services, Alexander Senteris, Head of Sustainability and Carbon Markets. How are you today, gentlemen?
Thank you, Marcos. Thanks for having us.
So, at the end of our discussion, we have a live Q&A session, so feel free to submit your questions throughout the event. Without further delay, I'll hand it over to our speakers. Anil, to kick things off, what makes 𝗍𝗏𝗋's approach to emissions management unique, and how does it address the biggest challenges ship owners face today?
Thanks, Marcos. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. So before we go into the 𝗍𝗏𝗋's solutions and the challenges, I just want to touch upon where are we now in terms of the regulations and what the shipping industry in general is facing. Let's agree and accept that we are in a transformation stage in shipping. It has been a decade, where we have got a lot of regulations, and then everybody is confused, also concerned on how to navigate this. So I think we are in that crucial year. 2025 already has started. You know that this is the year of compliance for EU ETS, as well as the reporting year for FuelEU. And then, we are also looking at IMO with a similar kind of regulation coming in. So lots in stake. So if we look at the challenges that the ship owners or the managers are facing today, is firstly this complex regulatory challenge. Because we have EU ETS, we have FuelEU, we also will have the IMO midterm measures. We have already gone through the complexities of the EEXI and CII regulations, a lot of documentation being done, every country coming up with their own decarbonization rules, regulations. So I think that's the first most complex aspect for ship managers and owners, how to basically standardize this into basically navigating and ensuring that this compliance is achieved. Secondly is the fleet digitalization and the adoption of alternatives, including alternative fuels. So as you know, if we look at the entire merchant fleet, we have less than 35% of the entire fleet which is digitalized till now. So that itself is a big challenge. So we have a great amount of ships that needs to be digitalized. And even if we look at alternative fuels, we talk about alternative fuels a lot. Presently, we have 5% of the fleet adopting alternative fuels. And if we also look at the order books for the next 5 years, this will increase only up to maybe, let's say, 21%. So that means another 79% is remaining. And we have to adopt, or let's say comply to these challenges, these landmarks that we have at 2030, 2040, 2050, which is also a big concern. So that's one thing which we need to really think about. What are we doing in kind of digitalizing in terms of enabling new technologies? The third aspect is the financial as well as the operational pressures. Because as you know, decarbonization is easy to speak, but it comes up with a lot of costs. The costs are regulatory costs, there are fuel costs, there are costs for adopting latest technologies, and this is something which is challenging. So for any ship owner or a manager, he might be thinking how much of cost it's going to take for me, how much it's going to get costly. So the balance that the ship owner or the manager needs to create is between sustainability, between compliance, but ultimately profitability. So how to balance all this? That's another challenge. And finally is the conservative approach that shipping industry by far has already taken, as you know. We have been conservative, laggards of sorts, people say. And generally we have the wait and watch attitude, especially. So if you see all the regulations that have come in the past, it has taken some time, it is given some time to adopt it, but now it's a lot of regulations within such a short span of time. So that is also one aspect that owners and managers hesitate to take action because they are looking at an ROI perspective for all these regulations. So in order to mitigate these challenges, OceanOpt's solution is basically looking at providing an end-to-end support for our clients. So when we say end-to-end support, it means both services as well as digital solutions or product lines. So we think in the shoes of the client and look at how we can start off, basically evaluation of the fleet and basically giving them that kind of evaluation of the fleet and what are the strategies that they can take. Another approach that we have is a proactive engagement that we give with the clients. This means that even before the clients realize or understand the implications of these regulations, we already go to them showing the exposure of the vessels. This is the same aspect that we've taken into consideration for both EU ETS and FuelEU. And also we are already ready for IMO with whatever regulations that come in. This also means that we must have a tailored client support. This means that some clients might have just 5 vessels, some might have 50 vessels. The need of clients also changes because the vessels that they are operating are in different zones. So if you have more vessels operating in Europe, you are more exposed to EU ETS regulations and FuelEU regulations. And obviously that kind of support and advice comes with data-driven analytics. And that's where digitalization is important, as you say. For you to understand your fleet, you must know the data that is there for so many years, so that you can comprehend the data and then find a solution to that data. So it's just not based on advice or whatever is seen in the market, but based on the data that these vessels or this fleet has collected over the years. Important aspect which IMO also has been reiterating for the last 4 or 5 years is the collaboration across the stakeholders. So when you got all these stakeholders, ship owners, ship managers, charterers, everybody needs to collaborate well in order to actually navigate this whole process. The realization that it's not solvable by one person is also important. At the end of it, we are also empowering the industry for the future. This means that we have to give tailored solutions, but also looking at being part of working groups in important international communities, shipping communities, so that we can also give the recommendations. So I think this is the main challenge that ship owners face. And it's very interesting to see, Marcos, what lies ahead of us. But anyway, from OceanOpt side, we are ready for it.
Wow, thank you for that insightful response, Anil. With such comprehensive approach to emissions management and the evolving regulatory landscape you outlined, it's pretty clear there's a lot for ship owners, managers, and fleet operators to consider. Building on that, let me ask Alex, with this evolving regulations like EU ETS, FuelEU Maritime, what are the most critical steps ship owners and fleet operators can take to stay compliant?
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Marco, for the question. Let's start with the basics. So in order to stay compliant, in order to understand what's the problem, there is a need to understand the regulation, have a clear view of what it imposes in terms of operational changes, how the procedures and the whole business is going to change through those regulations. We have seen the first kind of impact with EU ETS, FuelEU coming shortly. And we need to embrace these changes. We need to understand the regulation. We need to understand the complexities. We need to understand the challenges, but we also need to find the opportunities that this regulation will create. So once we set the framework, we understand the problem, then it's a matter of integrating this into our processes, our business strategies, and basically modernizing or changing a bit our procedures and the integration we have in the business scenarios. So then we need this part of integration to be reflected in our operational systems, in the way that we manage data, in the way that we set the processes, in the way that we communicate also through various stakeholders. So this is a major change, what we have seen, and what we keep highlighting in OceanOpt. There is a need for data accuracy, data transparency, communicating nice and throughout the value chain with charterers, owners, basically, even with peers or competitors, so that through this data and information we can build and basically improve our performance, let's say. And here comes how we are going to use this and how we should communicate and collaborate. So the next step, when we have the foundation, which is the data transparency and data communication, we need to engage with our counterparts, our peers, our clients, in order to have a plan. We need to have a common plan. And we need to have this plan to optimize operations, to improve performance, to set up common strategies, because as Anil mentioned in his opening remarks, this transition cannot be done basically by one party only. It cannot be done. We need a collaborative effort, and this is what we need to focus upon.
Thank you, Alex, for that detailed response. It's evident that aligning regulatory awareness with operational strategies, fostering data transparency, and engaging commercially with stakeholders are pivotal for staying compliant in today's dynamic environment. Anup, building on Alex's point about data accuracy and system integration, could you share how digitization and digitalization can simplify compliance management and the impact they have on operational efficiency?
Thank you, Marcos. It's quite a relevant question in today's age. Shipping being one of the, I can say that because I have seen this, shipping being one of the latest entrants in the digitization market. So yeah, we understand it is a need of the hour that digitization should be there. When I say digitization and how it will impact, actually, if you see industrial revolution or say IT technology or computer revolution for that matter, we have seen the effect of it. It has been quite, efficient in reducing the time required for concluding the process. It has increased the productivity. So now, let's say we have digitization and digitalization. Vessel sends the log. Earlier, it used to take time to reflect such logs, but nowadays, in every 6 hours or 4 hours, you have that log reflected here. Why it is required? Because for a faster compliance processes. Now, similarly, so if say for EU ETS, we are sharing data on a regular basis, or statements are shared, how we can share that data? With faster compliance of such data, if it reflects quickly in the system, it will be helpful. Apart from that, your question also included about the operational performance improvement. With different kind of codings, languages, Python is there, VBA is there, such amount of data can be filtered out, and good data, like good data quality, can be pushed to the verifiers without much errors. Secondly, this is also important to understand how we can build on that good corrected data. So from performance perspective, for example, we have done operational data modeling. In 2020 or somewhere, when we started this thing, for one vessel, I used to take around 10 to 15 days to understand what filters should be there, what kind of good amount of data should be there. We have been looking for 5 years data, I say. But now, with the recent technological, say, understanding of the languages or Python coding, we are doing one vessel in a week. Or actually, we are doing far better than that. So this is quite helpful. I believe in next 5 years, if we start the process of having correct data now, in next 5 years, we'll have good amount of data, good quality data. From that, we can make many things, like why operational modeling is needed. Okay, whether it is relevant, like hull inspection is there, hull cleaning is there. So if the sea trial and shop trial can say it correctly, sometimes they do not. So for vessels which are 15 to 20 years age, for them operational modeling becomes an important aspect. So for such reasons, even I believe in next 5 to 7 years, we will have operational trim optimization for that matter, or operational ballast optimization based on the historic data from the vessels. So yeah, I think it is quite important for vessels and ship owners to invest in digitization and digitalization.
Thank you, Anup. I actually like the parallels you drew with the Industrial Revolution. That truly highlights the transformative power of digitalization and also the opportunities it creates for future advancements in maritime, like AI and machine learning. Could you share your thoughts on the role alternative fuels play in achieving both compliance and sustainability in the maritime industry?
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you for the question. I would like to widen it up a bit. So alternative fuels is something that is quite hot lately in the industry. The first kind of approach and the first solution that we see is LNG and biofuels, basically, and methanol in some cases. So this optionality and flexibility in fuels is critical and assisting in these early stages. But also, I would like to expand it on alternative energy sources as well, because we need to consider everything matters in this transition. We need to consider wind-assisted propulsion or wind propulsion if we manage, shore power or electricity that could be used in some cases. So there is a broad portfolio of alternative options that we should consider. But taking it step by step, we need to focus on the current problem. And the current problem is the first years of compliance and planning ahead. So currently, what would be the first challenge is the compliance and the emission standards. So we have now a pretty solid map, a set of rules, I would say, on the alternatives and the compliance features. We have the emission standards, we have the European emission standards with renewable energy directives. We're going to see more and more, and we have the ISO standards. So we need to find alternatives that work today to do the first step. This is critical, but also we need to understand that these first steps is not enough. So we need to think widely and we need to think ahead. So we need to set a strategy and a pathway to decarbonize and basically tackle the emissions. And this is something that there's no silver bullet. There's no one solution. Every owner, not even every owner, every vessel is different. It's different because of its trading patterns. It's different because of the size. It's different because the alternatives that are available are different. The operational profile is different. You cannot have a solution that fits everything. So there is a needful planning for each owner with the projected fleet, with the operation that it has currently, with the operation that they project in the future, and maybe the businesses and the business segments that they want to be involved in the future. All of these are much needed to set a strategy. And this is where it all starts. And we need to set all the parameters for that. So basically, transitioning and setting a strategy, of course, it's not an easy kind of challenge. But it has also its benefits. So we need to understand that the first movers, let's say, the pioneers in that, where they could start finding what is their path and doing maybe not everything, but just the first steps towards this point, they would be the front runners in the years to come, because they would have experience, they would have some data, some, let's say, benefits already maybe from these alternatives, and basically they would create the knowledge that is needed for the transition. So I would say that there is also a positioning aspect of this. So if you have planned and you have executed some strategic first steps, then the positioning of the company for this transition is very, very important, and it is something that would be a great benefit to the pioneers and the entrepreneurs. So this is the aspect, and then we need to understand also that, of course, this is not easy. It's not something that we have experienced in the past. And of course, there are several challenges that we need to face. Currently, everything is evolving. The whole environment is evolving. We have the cost element. The alternatives are costly, and it's difficult to distribute this cost down the value chain. The availability and the infrastructure is not there. So there are several aspects that need to be considered and need to be addressed in the future. But this is not a reason to stop evolving. We need to evolve, and we need to have trust that all the peers in the industry and the value chain will evolve in the future.
Very interesting answer. Thank you, Alex. And as you mentioned, as the maritime industry moves towards a greener future, seems like these fuels will certainly play a very important role. That said, let's now shift gears and dive deeper into the future of emissions management. Anup, how do you see emissions management and compliance evolving over the next 5 years?
Quite relevant question, Marcos. From my perspective, or from what I understand from the regulations, we will require more granular level data. Energy from different consumers needs to be reported, different kinds of fuels, whatever, isolated properly and submitted to the verifier. Now, again, there will be an increase to reporting to different authorities on the different emissions needs to be reported to different authorities also. There will be also increase in documentation and record keeping. So I understand from one of the regulations, we have to have the documents for 5 years. So it becomes critical for ship managers in this case to have that relevant documents, even for ship owners for that matter. Now, last aspect is verifier's role. If we see across all the documents of say EU ETS or all the regulations, FuelEU and IMO DCS, the role of verifier has significantly increased. Scrutiny at very granular level will be happening on the documents which we provide. So now from the regulatory compliance perspective, administrative burden has increased, and different bodies of we have to communicate with different bodies. So purchasing of allowances. Even I remember at one of the ports had 𝗘𝗺𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗶 port has recently issued that carbon offsets might be there. So yeah, and then apart from that, when fuel, which is a vendor which is providing the obedience, whether the documents are correct or not, because IMO has a different requirement for biofuel, EU ETS has different, and FuelEU might be having somewhat different. So whether the peculiar things like GHG intensity is reported or not, or CF factor, carbon factor is in their documents or not, everything needs to be checked and submitted. Otherwise, we will be in a at the end of the year, there might be disagreements between owners and charters. Secondly, again, technology, softwares, we have to integrate with various verifiers. We have to integrate probably with the authority in that matter to submit the data directly. Now, the question you had asked, how it should evolve or how it should evolve according to me is, you have EU ETS, you have FuelEU, both of them probably might result into 200 euros per ton of fuel consumed. Club that with the IMO DCS midterm measures, which might have additional $150 or $200 per ton of fuel consumed. So we are looking at a $400 or $500 per ton of fuel consumed. And in such scenarios, we believe that the data sharing transparency between owners and charterers should be there. There should be a single platform which should cater to both owners and charterers. They should come together, and that's what we have been asking industry, and that's what our oceanopt is delivering. So we have this integration with various verifiers and softwares also we can club, and thereafter we can bring that transparency between both the parties. One source of true data is something which is need of the hour, looking at the discrepancies in this thing. So yeah, that's my take on how it should evolve.
Thank you, Anup. So as you're mentioning, we have a lot of different aspects to consider, like achieving validate data, managing the increasing administrative burden. I guess will be critical for vessel owners and ship managers to stay compliant and competitive in the coming years. Could you explain to us with FuelEU penalties, what strategies can ship owners adopt to minimize financial risks while improving performance?
Thank you, Marcos. So basically, FuelEU is an additional regulation which basically adds more pressure into the transition. I would like to start with something that, okay, is not considered as a solution for sure, but it's very, very helpful. So I believe that, and we believe as oceanopt, that digitalization and performance optimization should be an industry standard. It is an industry standard not because this will be the solution, but it will limit or it will reduce the energy required. So this will help us manage the fuel that we require for mitigating our emissions, the alternatives that we need to take, and basically reduce the cost of compliance. So the first thing is to manage and try to optimize the energy required for our services and basically for the whole industry. So having this as the first point, then what we see as a first kind of option, and of course it is quite widely accepted as that, is the use of available alternative fuels. Again, it is a matter of availability, and it is a matter of basically having this fuel in sufficient quantities and available in several ports, but it is like the first step that needs to be taken. Here we see a lot of companies trying to have their first, let's say, tests with biofuels. It is an alternative that gets some pace and will be helpful through the first years of compliance. But again, we need to think more into the future. This is an alternative that can be used in the current fleet. It meets the current targets, but in the future, we need to find better alternatives and improve even further. So again, it's a matter of how we are going to prepare our fleet and our operations for the challenges to come. So here we have the fleet modernization and the alternatives and the flexibility that we need to build in our future fleet. So this is an aspect, of course, very important for the new buildings and modernization of fleet, but also on retrofitting of the existing fleet as well. So there is an aspect of long-term planning that we need to include in our decision making. The first thing, of course, is to decide on a strategy that is implementable and has some sort of valid planning going forward, but it is there is a risk imposed because the infrastructure are not there. So we believe that also the flexibility and optionality is an aspect to be considered into the decision making. And what I would like to highlight again once more is that when someone invests in such an asset, there is a need for a collaborative effort. There is a need for risk sharing and benefit sharing. So again, this cannot be done solely by owner that invest in one vessel, but there is a need for an equitable benefit to the owner and to the all stakeholders. So again, collaboration and having a strategy set commonly, but through all stakeholders, owners, managers, charterers, all of them need to sit together and plan ahead and share the responsibilities, share the risks, share the benefits. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alex, for providing a thorough breakdown. Seems that integrating, again, as we mentioned, alternative fuels, digitalization, fleet modernization can position companies for both regulatory compliance and long-term sustainability. Building on this point, Anup, I'm curious to hear your thoughts regarding sustainability compliance. Can fleet owners turn this into a competitive advantage in today's market?
Yeah, so when you say the word compliance, it ticks as a regulatory compliance, but there are other compliance also between the owners and charter parties. But let's touch upon the step by step. We have the compliance like EEXI. It is like a design index for the vessel. Then we have CII right now, which is every year it becomes stringent by 2%. FuelEU is a kind of good measure actually, which promotes alternative fuel, shore power, use of wind-assisted propulsions. We also have other regulatory bodies which are recently I came across UK ETS will be there from 2026. IMO is coming up with well-to-wake emissions and that will be finalized, but still they have quite a work to do for how they will execute the penalty part because many flag states will be involved in that. Now coming to the sustainability part, sustainability is somewhat comes under the ESG. It is for the companies to set their internal targets, internal KPIs, how they will reduce the fuel consumption, how they are going to increase the use of alternative fuel consumption, what technology might be helpful for them. It's in a measurable quantity. What I can say is if some companies having higher sustainability targets, for them meeting the compliance won't be a problem and they will have lesser penalties if you just from an overview, but it is deeper what everyone has to look into that. Looking at the competitive advantage for shipping companies from the flag states on CII, there is certain incentive and IAM also has promoted in their documents, they have stated that it is always better to incentivize vessels which are A, B or C rated. Similarly, large business houses are looking into CII, EUI numbers as a KPI, and with us, we being the end consumers who are getting more aware about our carbon footprint, definitely the business houses will look into vessels which are more on a greener side rather than the older like a D or E rated or bad EUI for that matter.
Thank you, Anup. That makes a lot of sense, especially with how optimizing fuel consumption actually ties both into compliance and sustainability in the end. Before we move on to our live Q&A, Anil, I have a last question for you. What immediate actions do you think stakeholders should prioritize to effectively navigate the decarbonization journey? Can you provide to us a quick checklist of the most crucial steps?
Yeah, thanks, Marcos. I think we've been discussing a lot. There's a lot of overwhelming information, as you know. We also, on a lighter note, we go into all these meetings with owners, our stakeholders, and we see a lot of information being collected, but no action. So let's all agree and digest the fact that we need to act now. It's already late. So this means that regulations are in place. If you are not aware of your financial, legal, commercial, operational implications, then I think you're already late. So in order to help you with that, I can give you a checklist, as you mentioned, Marcos, and that's precisely what we do in our introductory meetings with clients. First is the understanding and aligning with the regulations. So if I have a fleet of vessels, where is it trading? What are the regulations that are under the purview of those vessels that I'm doing? And how much of exposure I have in terms of financial liability, legal liability, and things like that. So obviously we understand that for smaller owners or smaller companies, they might not have the resources nor the budget to invest in such teams. And that's where we can help them navigate the whole process. So first, we've understood and aligned with the regulations. And secondly is to invest in the digitalization and the data management part. As both Anup and Alex have mentioned, this is the core of everything. So if you are still working on Excel sheets, on manual reports, I mean, it's already late by now. And why? It is not just because we want to invest in tech. It's also because these are the basis of commercial discussions. So let's say for you, it is you're looking at reconciliation of your allowances that is there between owners and charterers. You must have proper qualitative data on which the negotiations should happen. So if I do not agree to what you say, we both must agree to that common source of truth, and that has to be digitalized. It should not be something that manually a chief engineer or a master on board has sent you, and that's got some kind of implication later on, because the ships are reporting to charterers, the ships are also reporting to owner and manager platforms. So that's where an alignment is needed. And thirdly is, once you've invested all these things, you have to evaluate and optimize your fleet performance, because as you know, each and every ton of fuel that is saved or optimized, I wouldn't use the word reduced. You need fuel, you need energy to run your operations. But then that is needed to understand that you've optimized it properly. That reduces your carbon footprint as well, although that percentage will be less. So the third aspect is to evaluate and optimize the fleet performance. And then once you've known all these things, that is the platform of developing a strategy. The strategy is basically in terms of a proper digital transformation and also looking at sustainability. You're having a great business today. Would it sustain 50 years later? What are the methodologies that you're going to take in the 10, 20, 30 years? Where are your ships operating? Do I have a strategy plan for that? Would alternative fuels be that one? Should I invest in biofuels now? Should I be looking at shore power? These things, will help us, make that kind of implementation of the strategy. Very important, fifth point, collaboration. We have understood also, being part of the industry, that we need to collaborate. There's a lot of collaboration already we are having with our competitors, our peers, people who can complement our business. So that collaboration is much, much needed in the whole process. And finally is to secure financial and operational preparedness. And then that's where investing money for something which is valuable today or can be valuable in the next 10, 20 years is very important. It's the, the present value of the future cash flows, as we say it in finance. That's very much important, because there's a legal implication, there's a financial implication, there's a commercial, operational implication. So that's where we can help you. I think the time to act is now, and if we do not act on emissions management right now, it's like letting go of a vessel in uncharted waters without any navigational aid or chart, and then you really don't know what you're actually going to stumble upon. So let's be collaborative, and let's look at emissions management very seriously, is at the end of the day our request. Thank you.
Perfect metaphor, Anil. Thank you for that comprehensive overview as well. The actionable steps you've shown will certainly help stakeholders navigate the complexities of decarbonization. So let us now take a look at our live questions. We have approximately 15 minutes to address your questions. You can still register them. And for any questions we don't manage to get to during this time, we'll be sure to provide answers on our social media and website. So let's get started with our first question. Alex, I think this question is what you mentioned before. For emissions management data accuracy between charterers and ship owners, you said it's necessary. So what efforts are currently being taken in order to comply with various regulations?
Yeah, so thank you. What efforts? I mean, there is a kind of transition again, and I think that all the parties are doing their best in order to ensure that the data accuracy and the communication is the best possible. So what we have seen and what we see more and more is integration, data integration through systems. We see, as Anup mentioned as well, a very, very important aspect and a very, very important contribution of the verifier to that. So what we have seen and how we enhance the accuracy and the collaboration, and we believe this is necessary and it should be, again, a business standard going forward, is seamless data sharing, ideally through APIs, communicating with owners, verifiers in the loop, commercial departments in the loop, charterers in the loop, everyone needs to have a common base where it stands as the foundation of all decisions, basically. So this is what we have seen. What is a challenge here is that the regulation, the frame, the time frame that is used for the regulation is not aligning with the commercial time frame, let's say. So you can have several charter parties within a reporting year, so you don't have binding results throughout the year, so you need to basically decide and conclude and agree based on the data available. We have seen this as the major challenge, but as the data accuracy is improving day by day, we see that a lot of there is limited issues, and the accuracy of the data that we have throughout the year is solid and could suffice for this kind of agreements throughout the year. But yeah, this is what I would say. So data accuracy throughout the year, communication channels with various stakeholders, verifiers in the loop, charters in the loop, commercial departments in the loop, understanding how these reported figures basically affect the commercial operations and the costs and the emission regulations. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for that response. I'll switch to Anup. There's a question here. What is the difference between digitization and digitalization, and what is the role of seafarers in both?
So let me start with this thing. You have to submit the data, so it's in a binary form coming from vessel to here, and the softwares, the platforms which are available on both sides. Earlier, it was just a reporting platform from the vessel. Now, what performance evaluation was done earlier at shore can be replicated back to the vessel also. Vessel can also check what kind of emissions they are having, the CI numbers they are having. So this kind of a setup where the internet is playing a crucial role, this is very important from the seafarer's perspective, where he is reporting all these parameters in the system. He is aware about what his vessel's penalties might be, how much CO2 his vessels are putting out. So one more, such awareness from seafarer's perspective is necessarily required. Earlier, just an example, earlier we had BLS, not earlier, but recently also we have that BLSFO grades and different kinds of fuel grades. But as far as IMO is concerned, they require HFO, LFO, and those equivalents, and when that is required for submission as well. So, seafarer's perspective, understanding of such grades is necessary, and for that particular reason, we have a vessel performance and decarbonization course where we assist our seafarers to understand what are the critical nuances in the regulations, how to report exactly, how to report correctly. So I believe, yeah, the understanding, eventually we believe seafarers will have to understand more, stress more on such aspects.
Yeah, and if I could add to what Anup had said, Marcos, is so the difference between digitization and digitalization, as an example, I could say that, if you have an analog device and you want to make it digital, it's just that digitization. But when you let's say as an example, you want to transmit the data over cloud and replicate the same data across two platforms, that is kind of looking at digitalization. But when we look at these two terms, that's not even the future. The future is digital transformation. So that means the transformation of your entire company into new technologies, understanding that not only the seafarers, the shore staff, the management, the overall culture of the organization changes in terms of what your shipping industry is basically going through.
Yeah.
And rightly pointed out, on why seafarers should know. I mean, this is very important. We kind of ignore the fact that seafarers should know about decarbonization, because we feel that they're responsible for the maintenance, safety, and mostly the technical aspects. Let's understand that decarbonization, as per today's regulation, has not only a technical impact, it also has a commercial impact. So if a chief engineer is reporting wrongly in a non-digitalized platform, separately to charterers and owners, this means that obviously you don't have that same data across those things. So he needs to understand that it's got a commercial implication, because the allowances that the charter is looking at and the allowances that the owner is looking at will differ. And then they will have a negotiation which will be there, and finally there will be discussions and debates on that, which will come back to the vessel. So that's where the broader level of understanding of decarbonization is needed by seafarers. And I think we are in that transformation. And that's why I'm saying transformation is not just for the shore employees or, let's say, service companies like us. It's also mainly for seafarers as well.
Yeah. It's as you mentioned, I think, during our discussion, that it needs a collaborative approach between all stakeholders for this to begin. So the next question, I think, Anil, we have this, what kind of preparedness is being taken up by the shipbuilding industry for the compliance and transition, and what is the time frame? Is IMO in dialogue with them?
Okay. First thing, what we need to understand, that when I was saying that we are getting late, one of the reasons that was actually going through my mind is, let's say an owner has got a vessel and the dry dock of that vessel is already completed. And then he's looking at, let's say, 2030. And then by 2030, you have more cappings, more pressures happening. So the point is that if he wants to invest in some digital technology, or let's say some ESDs or EETs, then he has to dock the vessel again, which is an additional cost. So that's why we're saying strategy needs to be there right now. Now, this means that now we will, if you've seen, whatever future orders are coming, especially on the shipbuilding side, is mostly on the dual fuel engines, are mostly on hull optimization, are mostly on engine optimization. So obviously shipyards, dry dockings, everywhere we see this energy efficiency, decarbonization aspects being talked about. So obviously that is one discussion that is there. I'm sure that IMO is discussing with them, because all these working groups which are part of these discussions are there. We know that IMO is basically our major governing body, which is looking at 176 member states giving all their recommendations, and most of them have kind of agreed going on for this maritime lien or carbon levy that we want to discuss. But I'll just ask Alex if there is any other action, extra point that you want to put.
Yeah, no, I would agree to all points, and I think that also for the shipbuilding industry, it's also a matter of positioning. So you see yards that they are more prone to develop and optimize their designs, potentially provide some optionality on fuels and flexibility. We see a lot of new vessels having some sort of tiered, let's say, readiness for alternative fuels in the future. We see some movement here. So I believe that in general, the shipbuilding industry is coping up pretty well. It is a matter of demand that will pile up in the future, and we need to understand that going forward, the time frames is pretty tight. So as Anil said, if you need to do some major retrofit and you have a dry dock now, then your next option is 5 years from now. So you need to plan ahead. And I believe that mostly the shipbuilding industry had provided the solutions and will continue doing so based on the demand coming from owners.
Thank you. Hope that clears our viewers' question. So one other is a comment/question. So one of our viewers is saying, to comply with recent regulatory aspects, biofuel solutions seems like a good starting point. However, based on talks with fuel suppliers and bunkering agents, the expected surge in biofuel demand during Q4 of 2025, especially for European trading vessels, may strain supply and availability. This was closely discussed with bunkers in Rotterdam and Singapore. How do you think the industry will address this challenge?
We can start with, cannot know. We don't have a crystal ball, I would say, but we can try our best. There is also, I mean, biofuel is one option. Biofuel, why is popular? Because it can be deployed to the existing fleet. So that's the main benefit. And especially if you go to blends below 30%, then basically it's quite relatively easy to handle it. But there is always, and it will be, many options, and basically we need to find the optimal spot. Each owner has to find optimal spot. We have also vessels running on LNG, which is a good option for complying. And there is a big aspect that we didn't touch upon a lot during the discussion, which is the pooling aspect of FuelEU regulation in particular. For other emission regulations like EU ETS or IMO midterm measures remains to be seen, but from what we have seen, this is not an option. But for FuelEU in particular, as mentioned in the question, also this can be an option. And it can be a very good option in terms of costs, and basically also it helps because you solve the availability issue in big, I mean, mostly. But again, has its own complexities, and it's not, just a solution that can then solve everything.
Yeah, but I also feel, I think there's a lot of discussions. Obviously, this question is where we looked at each other, because obviously this is one challenge which is being expected in the industry. But, my point is this, that we should stay positive, because, we have so many years. We believe that the technology will mature. This means that with the economies of scale and scope, we will have technologies which will emerge. If you see, I mean, you just need to compare with what was there 5 years back, and now there's a lot of
propulsion.
Yes, propulsion also. This is being discussed. So we believe that positive kind of approach should be there. We have a lot of geopolitical happening very lately. I mean, from oceanopt side, we are never bothered about that. We are a solutions provider. We always reach our clients and make them navigate the compliance aspect, and that's what we want to concentrate on. And in the next 5 years, we don't think that the penalties are so high. Yeah, obviously, with the next 10 years, FuelEU is going to really exponentially go up. So we need to act now. Marcos, believe me, there is a big chunk of owners who have still not decided. And that's where we want to really go to and tell them that this is what is in store.
I actually have the last question we can answer today is pretty relevant to what you just mentioned. What challenges do you face in your day-to-day discussion with clients regarding EU ETS or FuelEU?
Yeah, so the challenge is what I have just mentioned. So we've had also discussions with clients over and over again, but this basically resistance to act is one thing that we see. They see that, okay, let's see, once the EU ETS is over, then they look at FuelEU mostly because we see that coming. Then they are looking at, okay, let's also see what IMO is coming up with the midterm measures, and then we will act after 2027. But by that time, it's too late. The point is you can easily make a strategy now. And when I say now, it's already late if your vessels are trading the EU and they are also looking at, this carbon levy that will come in. So I think that is one major challenge. The second major challenge, as I was also mentioning, is digitalization. We make a lot of measures. They are always looking at an ROI. How much money would I get back? But I think some of the ROI is also qualitative. The data is quality. That data quality is needed because that's needed for your commercial agreements. There's a big process, as you know. It's not just technical. Legally, you have to agree. Commercially, you have to agree. Clauses needs to be agreed. BIMCO is helping a lot, and that's where we need to start discussing. And finally, Marcos, I think we need to remove the silo approach that we've been doing till now. The silo that the owner operates and the charterer operates separately, this needs to go. People need to collaborate. They need to understand that the shipping industry is our industry. We need to give back to the industry. And the Oceanopt is firm and very positive about leading that.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Anil, Anup, Alex, thank you for this insightful discussion and for sharing your expertise on this evolving landscape of emissions management and decarbonization in the maritime industry. and how to move forward. As we conclude today's session, remember that the journey towards sustainability and compliance is not one we take alone. It's a collective effort that requires collaboration, innovation, and proactive action. We hope all of you had a valuable takeaway from to reform your strategies. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our OceanOpt experts. We're excited to announce that our next webinar, scheduled for April, will feature a guest from DNV. Be sure to follow us on our social media challenge to stay updated with the latest announcements and event details. Thank you, everyone, for joining our first Let's Talk Emissions webinar. We look forward to having you join us next time. Until then, stay tuned and take care.